The restaurant was quiet in the way only very expensive places could be quiet. Not empty, not silent, but controlled, like every sound knew it did not belong there for too long. Soft music floated through the air like a slow breath. Glasses touched gently, forks moved carefully. Rich people sat straight in their seats and spoke in low voices as if even their words cost money. The lights were warm and golden, shining on polished tables and clean white plates. And moving through all of this was a black waitress named Maya. She walked calmly from table to table with a steady pace. Her back straight, her face relaxed, her eyes alert but gentle. She wore a simple uniform that blended into the room. Nothing about her stood out at first. She looked normal, polite, quiet, like someone who had learned how to disappear in places where people did not look at her for who she was. She carried herself with care, placing plates down smoothly, listening without interrupting, nodding when needed. She had worked in places like this before and knew the rules. Stay calm, stay respectful, do not draw attention. Most people barely noticed her until they needed something. And that was how she liked it. At least, that was how it had always been. At one table near the center of the room sat Victor Holly, a famous millionaire known for his loud voice and larger-than-life presence. He wore an expensive suit that fit him perfectly. His watch alone could pay for a small house. He leaned back in his chair like the space belonged to him. His voice was louder than everyone else's, cutting through the soft music and quiet talks. He was already annoyed. His food was not fast enough. The wine was not cold enough. The world was not moving at his speed. When Maya passed his table, he snapped his fingers sharply. The sound was sudden and rude. It made heads turn. Maya stopped and turned toward him, her face calm, her voice polite as she asked what he needed. Victor did not look at her like a person. He looked at her like a problem. He spoke down to her, using words that were sharp and careless, complaining loudly, making sure others could hear. His tone was full of pride and anger. A few people shifted in their seats. Some looked away. Some watched with interest. No one spoke. Maya listened without reacting, her hands steady, her breathing slow. She answered him clearly and respectfully. But Victor was not satisfied. He liked control. He liked power. And he liked showing it. He leaned forward and said more. His words colder now, heavier, meant to remind her of where he thought she belonged. The air around the table began to feel tight, like the room itself was holding its breath. Then suddenly, Victor pushed his chair back and stood up. The scrape of the chair against the floor sounded loud and wrong. The music felt too soft now. His movement pulled attention from every corner of the restaurant. Even the servers at the far end stopped walking. Victor stepped closer to Maya. Too close. His shadow fell across her. His voice dropped low but carried far. There was anger in it and something else too. Something dangerous. The room went silent in a way that felt different from before. Not controlled, but fearful. People could sense that something bad was about to happen. That the moment had crossed into a place where words could no longer be taken back. A woman at another table held her breath. A man tightened his grip on his glass. The manager froze behind the counter, unsure of when to step in. Maya did not move back. She did not raise her voice. She did not rush. She simply stood there, looking at Victor. Not with anger, not with fear, but with calm focus. Her face showed nothing. And that calm felt strange, unsettling. It did not match the moment. It did not match what Victor expected. She did not speak. She did not apologize again. She did not lower her eyes. She stayed still, grounded, like she belonged exactly where she was. That silence made people uneasy, because it felt like the quiet before a storm. Some felt it in their chest, others in their hands. Something about Maya's stillness changed the balance in the room. Victor noticed it too, even if he did not understand it. His confidence wavered for a second, just a small crack, because people who were afraid usually showed it. But she did not, and that made the room feel colder, heavier, like time itself had slowed down. Everyone watched, waiting for what would come next, not knowing that this was only the first wave, and that nothing in that room would feel the same again after this moment. Victor Halle stood there, tall and stiff, looking down at Maya as if he expected her to shrink under his shadow. His pride burned hot inside him because in his world, people moved when he told them to move. They spoke when he allowed them to speak, and they apologized even when they were not wrong. Money had taught him that lesson again and again. Every restaurant, every meeting, every room bent to his will, and this one was no different. Or at least it was not supposed to be. He cleared his throat and spoke again, slower now, louder. His words chosen to remind everyone who he was. He talked about respect, about service, about how people like her should know their place. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Some stared at their plates. Others watched closely, almost guilty, as if they were part of this without saying a word. Victor enjoyed the attention. He always had. He believed power was something you showed, something you pressed down on others so they would feel small. He had learned early in life that fear worked faster than kindness, and he had never stopped using it. Maya listened as he spoke, her eyes steady, her shoulders relaxed. Inside her mind, she counted her breath. Slow and even, she had heard words like his before. In different places, from different mouths, always loud, always sure they were right. She remembered long nights, hard training, moments when she had learned to stay calm even when her heart raced. She had promised herself long ago that no one would ever control her with anger again. Victor mistook her silence for weakness. He leaned in slightly, expecting her to look away, to step back, to show fear, but she did not. And that small detail began to bother him. His voice grew sharper, his patience thinner. He asked her if she understood who he was, if she knew what kind of power he had. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were listening. The manager took a step forward, then stopped, unsure, afraid of causing a scene with someone so rich. A young waiter near the door watched Maya closely, sensing something different about her, something strong beneath the calm. Victor felt the eyes on him and straightened his back, his pride pushing him forward. He believed this moment would end like all the others, with him winning, with her backing down, but deep inside, without knowing why, he felt a strange tension. A feeling he was not used to, the feeling of standing in front of someone who was not afraid of him. And that feeling made him angry, made him careless, as Maya stood there quietly, steady as the floor beneath her feet, waiting, not for his approval, but for the moment when the truth of who she was would no longer stay hidden. Victor's patience finally broke, and when it did, it was not loud at first, but sharp and sudden, like glass cracking under pressure. His hand moved without thought and grabbed the edge of the tray Maya was holding. The plates rattled as he pulled it toward himself, his face tight with anger. And before anyone could stop him, he shoved the tray away. It hit the floor with a loud crash, plates shattered. Silverware slid across the polished surface, and the sound cut through the room like thunder. Gasps rose from every direction. A woman covered her mouth. A man stood halfway from his chair, then froze. The music stopped, leaving only the echo of broken dishes and heavy breathing. The manager rushed forward but stopped again. Caught between fear and duty, security at the door hesitated. Unsure of how far this would go, Victor stood over the mess he had made, chest rising fast, his anger now fully visible. He looked at Maya as if daring her to react, as if waiting for her to flinch or cry or beg, but she did none of those things. She slowly lowered her empty hands to her sides. Careful, controlled, her eyes stayed on Victor, calm and clear. The calm did not soften the moment. It sharpened it, making the silence heavier. People expected her to shout or step back, but instead she took one small breath and spoke for the first time since the tray fell. Her voice was quiet but steady, not shaking, not rushed. She said, "Please step back." Only those 3 words. Nothing more, nothing less. The room seemed to lean toward her. Listening, Victor blinked, surprised, then laughed. A short laugh filled with disbelief, as if he could not accept that she had just spoken to him that way. He stepped closer again, invading her space. His voice rose, accusing her of disrespect, of not knowing who she was dealing with. His words spilled out fast and careless. Each one meant to hurt, to control, to push her down. A few guests whispered to each other. Some shook their heads, others watched in silence. Too afraid to get involved, Maya stood her ground. Her feet planted firmly, her posture straight. She did not raise her hands, did not clench her fists. But there was something in the way she stood that felt different now. A quiet readiness, a kind of balance. A man near the window noticed it first. He had seen it before in people trained to stay calm under pressure. His eyes narrowed, sensing something was wrong. Victor did not notice. His anger made him blind. He pointed a finger close to her face, his voice dropping low, threatening. The room felt like it might explode. Every second stretched longer than the last. The manager finally found his voice and asked Victor to calm down. But Victor ignored him. He was too far gone. His pride demanded victory, demanded that Maya break, but instead of fear, he saw something else in her eyes, something steady and unshaken. And for a brief moment, doubt crept into his mind. It was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. He pushed it away with more anger. He took another step forward. And that was when everything changed. Maya shifted her weight slightly, so small most people missed it. But those who knew watched closely. Her stance became firm. Balanced, ready. She did not attack. She did not rush. She simply adjusted herself, like someone preparing for a strong wind. The man by the window felt his heart race. He knew then that she was not just a waitress. Victor finally sensed it too, though he could not explain it. The air between them felt charged, like a warning he did not understand. His voice faltered for a second, and in that pause, the power in the room quietly shifted, not with noise, not with force, but with control. Maya's calm became a mirror, reflecting Victor's anger back at him, making it look smaller, weaker. The guests felt it. A strange feeling that the story they expected was no longer going the way they thought. Victor swallowed, his hand lowered slightly. And for the first time since he stood up, he did not know what to do next. The room remained frozen, broken plates on the floor, people holding their breath. Time slowed to a crawl, and in that stillness, it became clear that Victor had crossed a line he could not step back from, and that Maya was no longer just standing there to endure. She was standing there by choice, ready, waiting, and fully in control of what would happen next. The pause after Victor's last step felt endless. Like the air itself had thickened and refused to move. The broken plates on the floor lay scattered like signs of a mistake that could not be undone. And every eye in the restaurant stayed fixed on the space between Victor and Maya. Victor tried to speak again, but the words did not come out the way he wanted. His voice caught slightly, and that small break shocked him more than anything else. He was not used to hesitation, not used to feeling unsure. He straightened his shoulders as if that alone could bring his power back, but something had already changed. Maya's body was no longer just still. It was balanced, steady, like she was fully present in every part of herself. Her feet were placed firmly, her weight centered. Her hands relaxed but ready, not tight with anger, not loose with fear, just prepared. A few people in the room began to notice details they had missed before. The way she stood was not casual, not the way someone unsure would stand. It was the way someone stood who trusted their own control. A man near the bar narrowed his eyes. He had trained years ago and recognized the quiet signs. The calm breathing, the straight spine, the focus that did not waver. He leaned forward slightly, realizing that Victor had made a serious mistake. Victor felt the attention shifting, and it made him uncomfortable. He had always enjoyed being watched. But now the looks felt different, not impressed. Not afraid, but curious, questioning. He tried to laugh it off again, but the sound came out weak. He told Maya she was making a big problem out of nothing, that she should remember who paid her salary. But his words no longer filled the room the way they had before. They fell flat. Maya finally moved. Not forward, not back, just enough to clearly face him. Her eyes stayed level with his, calm and sharp. She spoke again. Her voice still even, still quiet, but strong enough that everyone heard. She told him this was his last warning to step away. The words were not angry, they were clear. Like a fact, not a threat. That clarity sent a chill through the room. Victor felt it run down his back, though he would never admit it. He scoffed and shook his head, telling her she was ridiculous. But his hand trembled slightly at his side. A detail only a few noticed. The manager stepped closer again, his voice shaking as he asked Victor to stop. Security finally began to move, but slowly, unsure of how to step into a moment that felt bigger than rules. Maya did not look away from Victor, even as others moved around them. Her focus stayed locked. She had learned long ago that breaking eye contact at the wrong time could change everything. Inside her mind, she stayed calm, counting her breath, remembering the discipline that had shaped her. She did not want this. She did not want attention. But she would not allow herself to be pushed again. Victor took another half step forward, then stopped. Something inside him screamed that this was wrong, that he was no longer in control. His pride fought that feeling, pushing him to continue, but his body hesitated. The room felt divided now. Some people silently hoped Maya would be okay. Others feared what might happen next. A woman whispered that someone should call the police. Another guest quietly started recording on their phone. Sensing this moment would not be forgotten, Maya noticed none of it. Or maybe she noticed all of it and chose to ignore it. Her world had narrowed to Victor and the space between them. She adjusted her stance again, subtle, precise. A movement so small it looked like nothing. But to trained eyes, it meant everything. It was a line drawn without words. Victor's eyes flicked down for a second, his instincts catching something his mind could not explain. He felt exposed, like a man standing too close to a cliff edge he had not seen. He opened his mouth to insult her again, but the words stayed stuck, replaced by frustration, by confusion, by the fear of looking weak in front of everyone. He clenched his jaw and breathed hard. The sound loud in the quiet room. Maya's expression did not change. She did not smile. She did not glare. She simply waited. Patient, controlled, ready to respond but not to attack. The man near the bar felt his heart pound, knowing that if Victor made one more wrong move, the outcome would be very different from what he expected. Time seemed to slow even more, each second stretching tight with tension. Victor finally stepped back a small amount, barely noticeable, but it was enough. A murmur ran through the room. The shift was clear now. The power he had walked in with was slipping away, not taken from him by force, but by his own actions. Maya remained still, giving him the space he had refused to give her, showing restraint instead of aggression. And in that restraint, the truth began to reveal itself to everyone watching. She was not just a quiet waitress caught in a bad moment. She was someone who understood control, who knew when to stand firm and when to wait. Victor looked around and saw faces no longer impressed by him. Some disappointed, some judgmental, some simply tired. His anger cooled into embarrassment, though it burned just as deep. He realized too late that the room no longer belonged to him, that this moment was no longer his to command. And as Maya stood there calm and unshaken, it became clear to everyone that the real strength in the room was not loud, not rich, not cruel, but silent, steady, and completely unafraid. The room did not move even after Victor stepped back. It was as if everyone was waiting for permission to breathe again. The broken plates on the floor were still untouched. The manager stood frozen halfway between duty and fear. And the soft lights above seemed too bright for a moment this heavy. Victor felt the weight of every eye on him now. Not as admiration, not as fear, but as judgment. His chest felt tight. His pride wounded in a way money could not fix. He tried to speak, to say something that would bring the moment back under his control. But the words came out wrong, sharp and weak at the same time. He accused Maya of causing a scene, of embarrassing him. But even as he spoke, his voice lacked the power it had before. Maya listened without reacting, her face calm, her posture unchanged. She did not interrupt, did not defend herself with words. When Victor finished, the silence returned. Deeper than before, Maya then moved. Slow and deliberate, she did not rush him. She did not raise her hands. She simply stepped slightly to the side, giving him space while also closing off his path forward. It was a small movement, but it changed everything. Victor felt it immediately. His body reacted before his mind could understand why. He shifted his weight awkwardly, realizing too late that she had positioned herself perfectly. A quiet gasp moved through the room. A man near the door whispered that something was wrong. Security finally stepped closer, but even they hesitated, sensing that Maya was not the threat here. Victor's anger flared again, driven by panic more than confidence now. He made a sudden move, not to attack, but to intimidate, stepping forward quickly, raising his voice. But Maya responded faster. Not with violence, not with chaos, but with pure control. She caught his movement, redirected it, and in one smooth motion stopped him where he stood. His arm was held in a way that caused no harm, but left him completely unable to move. The action was so fast and clean that many people did not even see how it happened. They only saw the result, Victor frozen, eyes wide, his body locked. The room fell into complete silence. No music, no whispers, no movement. Phones were raised, hands trembled. Victor's face changed from anger to shock, then to fear. He tried to pull away, but could not. The strength holding him was calm, steady, and unbreakable. Maya leaned slightly closer, her voice still quiet, still controlled. She told him this was over and that he needed to calm down. There was no hate in her words, no joy, just certainty. Victor's breathing became fast and uneven. Humiliation burned through him. He had never felt this powerless, not in front of so many people, not without a single punch thrown. The manager finally found his courage and rushed forward. Calling for security to take control of the situation, Maya released Victor immediately, stepping back and raising her hand slightly to show she meant no harm. Victor stumbled, catching himself on the table. His suit wrinkled, his pride shattered. Security moved in and positioned themselves between them, but the danger had already passed. The damage already done, the guests began to murmur. Some in shock, some in quiet approval, others in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Victor tried to speak again, but his voice cracked. He looked around and saw no allies, only faces that no longer respected him. Maya stood a few steps away, calm as ever, her breathing steady, her eyes soft but firm. She looked like someone who had just finished a task, not someone who had fought. The manager apologized to the guests and asked them to remain calm, promising the situation was under control. But everyone knew they had just seen something rare, something honest. Victor was escorted away from the center of the room. His head lowered, his shoulders tense. The whispers followed him like shadows. Maya was asked if she was okay. She nodded once, simple and quiet. She picked up a cloth and began helping clean the broken plates, as if this moment was just another part of her shift. That simple act stunned people more than anything else. The woman who had stood her ground against a powerful man was now kneeling calmly, doing her job with care. A few guests stood and clapped softly. Not loud, not proud, but respectful. The sound spread slowly, filling the room with a different kind of energy. Maya paused for a moment, surprised, then gave a small nod and returned to her work. She did not smile. She did not bow. She did not seek praise. She simply continued. Because for her, this was never about winning. It was about drawing a line and holding it. And as the room slowly returned to motion, it was clear to everyone that something important had shifted. Not just for Victor, but for everyone who had watched quietly before, learning in silence what real strength truly looked like. The restaurant slowly began to breathe again after Victor was led away. The tension did not disappear at once, but softened little by little, like a storm moving farther into the distance. Security stood near the entrance, speaking quietly into their radios. The manager wiped his face and tried to return order with polite words. Guests settled back into their seats, though many still whispered, their eyes often drifting toward Maya, who had returned to cleaning the floor as if nothing important had happened. She moved carefully, picking up broken pieces one by one, placing them into a container with steady hands, her face calm, her breathing even. But inside her chest, her heart beat strong and fast. Not from fear, but from release. Years of discipline helped her stay grounded. She had learned long ago that control did not end when danger passed. It continued until the body felt safe again. A young server knelt beside her to help, glancing at her with wide eyes, whispering that she had been amazing. Maya nodded softly and told him to be careful with the glass. Her voice gentle, not proud, not shaken, just present. The manager approached her slowly, unsure of what to say. He thanked her and apologized at the same time. Explaining that the situation had gotten out of hand, Maya listened and told him she understood. She did not blame him. She knew fear made people hesitate, and she did not carry anger with her anymore. The guests nearby overheard and felt something heavy lift from the room. A woman at a nearby table leaned toward her friend and said that Maya had handled everything with more grace than anyone else there. Another man quietly said that Victor had embarrassed himself more than anyone could have imagined. Phones buzzed with messages, videos were already being shared, though no one knew yet how far they would travel. When the floor was clean, Maya stood and smoothed her uniform. The manager asked if she needed a break, but she shook her head. She said she was fine and returned to her work, carrying plates, refilling glasses, speaking politely as before. But something had changed in the way people looked at her. They no longer looked through her. They looked at her with respect, curiosity, even admiration. She felt it and acknowledged it without letting it control her. Because attention could be as dangerous as anger if it pulled her away from herself. As the evening continued, a few guests approached her quietly, thanking her, telling her she had inspired them. One older man said he had served years ago and recognized discipline when he saw it. Maya smiled gently and thanked him, but did not explain anything. She never liked talking about her past. Later that night, when the crowd thinned and the restaurant prepared to close, the manager asked Maya to sit with him for a moment. They spoke privately near the bar. He asked her if she wanted to file a report, if she needed time off, if she wanted the restaurant to take action. Maya listened carefully, then spoke honestly. She said she wanted accountability but not revenge. She wanted safety, but not attention. She wanted respect for everyone who worked there. The manager nodded, deeply moved, and promised changes would be made. That no one would ever be allowed to treat staff that way again. Maya thanked him and stood, ready to leave. When she stepped outside into the cool night air, the city felt louder than the restaurant ever had. Cars passed, lights flashed, people moved fast. She paused for a moment and closed her eyes, letting the night ground her. She remembered another night years ago when she had not been safe, when she had felt powerless, when her life had changed forever. That memory had driven her to train, to rebuild herself piece by piece. She had learned control, strength, and patience not to hurt others, but to protect herself and those around her. She never planned to use it in a restaurant, never wanted to be seen, but life did not always ask permission. Across town, Victor sat alone in the back of a car. His head low, his mind racing, the scene replayed again and again. Not the moment he yelled, not the moment he stood up, but the moment he lost control without being touched. The moment he realized his power meant nothing. The silence hurt more than any insult. He checked his phone and saw messages flooding in. Some asking what happened, others judging him. A few sponsors already pulling away. He felt anger, shame, and fear mixed into something bitter. For the first time in his life, money could not fix the problem. He could not buy back respect, back at her small apartment. Maya removed her shoes and sat quietly. The room simple and clean. She made tea and sat by the window. Watching the city lights, her body finally relaxed. She felt tired but calm. She thought about how easily things could have gone wrong. How one more step from Victor could have forced a different outcome. And she felt grateful that control had won over force. The next morning, the story spread. Headlines were written. Videos watched millions of times. People argued online, some praising Maya, others debating power and respect. But Maya stayed away from it all. She went to work, lived her life, trained quietly as she always had. The restaurant became known as a place where staff were protected, where respect mattered. And Victor's name slowly faded from conversations about success and power, replaced by discussions about humility and consequences. Weeks later, a young woman approached Maya after a shift, saying she had seen the video and felt stronger knowing someone like her existed. Maya listened and placed a hand over her heart, telling her strength lived inside everyone. Sometimes it just needed a moment to wake up. And as Maya walked home that night, under the same city lights, she felt something rare and peaceful. Not victory, not pride, but balance. The knowledge that she had stayed true to herself, that she had protected her dignity without losing her humanity. And that sometimes the strongest response was not to strike, but to stand firm and let the truth reveal itself. The days that followed changed quietly but deeply, not with loud announcements or sudden fame, but with small moments that carried lasting meaning. Maya returned to the restaurant each day and noticed how the space felt different now, not just safer but more aware. Managers paid closer attention, staff stood taller, and guests spoke with more care, as if the walls themselves remembered what had happened. People still recognized her sometimes, whispering or nodding with respect. But Maya never let it change her rhythm. She greeted customers the same way, worked the same hours, and kept her life simple, because she knew that moments passed but character stayed. One evening after a long shift, the manager called a short meeting. He spoke about respect, about dignity, about how no amount of money gave someone the right to hurt another person. He did not mention Victor by name, but everyone knew. The staff listened closely, some with tears in their eyes, because many of them had carried silent stories of their own. Maya stood among them, not in front, not behind, just present, feeling a quiet pride not in herself, but in what the moment had opened for others. Outside the restaurant, the world continued to talk. Videos were still shared. Discussions still argued. Some people praised Maya as a hero. Others tried to twist the story. But over time, the noise softened, replaced by something more steady. Conversations about behavior, about how power should be handled, about how silence could be strength. Victor's life moved in a different direction. Sponsors left, invitations stopped, and doors that once opened easily now stayed closed. He tried to defend himself at first, blaming stress, misunderstanding, anyone but himself, but the truth followed him, not loudly, just consistently, until he could no longer ignore it. One night he sat alone in his large house, the rooms quiet and empty, and realized that he had built everything on control, not respect, and when control failed, there was nothing left to stand on. He began to change slowly, not because he wanted praise, but because he had lost too much to stay the same. He attended counseling, stepped away from public life, and learned lessons he had avoided for years. Though his journey was his own and separate from Maya's, it was shaped by the moment she stood her ground without striking him. Maya never followed his story closely. She believed everyone carried their own responsibility. Her focus stayed on her growth. She trained quietly, not out of fear, but discipline. She volunteered at a local center teaching young girls confidence and self-control. Not fighting, but awareness, posture, voice, and boundaries. She told them strength did not mean hurting others. It meant knowing when to say no and believing it mattered. The girls listened closely, seeing in her a calm example rather than a loud promise. One evening after class, a mother thanked Maya with tears in her eyes. Saying her daughter now walked differently, spoke differently, Maya smiled softly, knowing that change often began in the smallest ways. Months later, the restaurant celebrated its anniversary. Staff and guests gathered. Laughter filled the space that once held silence. Maya stood near the window holding a tray, watching people enjoy themselves, and felt a deep sense of balance. Not because she had won something, but because she had stayed true to herself in a moment that could have broken her. She remembered how still she had been that night, how the room had frozen, how fear had passed through her and left without taking control. That memory no longer felt heavy. It felt settled, like a lesson placed gently back into her life. As the night ended and she walked home under the city lights, Maya thought about how people often looked for loud endings. Big fights, clear winners, but real change rarely looked like that. Sometimes it looked like calm standing against anger, silence holding its ground, dignity refusing to bend. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and closed it softly behind her. The world outside continued with its noise and speed, but inside she felt peace, the kind that came from knowing she had honored herself without harming another. And that knowledge stayed with her, steady and strong, long after the story stopped being told, long after the room unfroze, long after the night became just another memory. Because some moments do not end when the scene is over. They live on in the choices people make afterward. And in that way, Maya's quiet strength continued to move forward, shaping lives, shaping spaces, not through force, not through fame, but through the simple and powerful act of standing firm and letting truth speak for itself. After months had passed since that unforgettable night, the restaurant had changed in ways no one had expected. The staff moved with confidence now, not because fear had disappeared, but because respect had replaced it. Maya walked through the dining area each day with the same quiet grace, carrying trays and refilling glasses, but now her presence felt different. Guests no longer ignored her, and colleagues no longer whispered about her in awe. They treated her as the kind of person whose strength was invisible until it was absolutely needed. A force that did not shout, but held the room in balance. Victor Hale's name still appeared in the occasional gossip or business article, but it no longer carried the same weight. His reputation had shifted from untouchable millionaire to cautionary tale, a man whose arrogance had been quietly but decisively exposed. Maya never sought revenge, never gloated, never watched him fall. She had learned that power without control was nothing, and that true strength lay in remaining grounded and facing challenges without losing herself. She focused on her own life, knowing that her calm had changed the course of someone else's arrogance without her needing to act aggressively. One rainy evening, Maya was walking home from her shift, the city wet with reflections of neon lights and street lamps. Her shoes clicked against the pavement in steady rhythm. The streets were busy, people hurrying by, umbrellas in every color, the smell of rain mixed with food from nearby vendors. As she walked, she remembered the night that had altered her life. She remembered Victor's anger, the way the room had gone silent, the sharp sound of the broken tray. She remembered the moment when she had stood still, calm and centered, and had let the truth of her strength speak louder than words. That memory no longer carried fear, it carried clarity and pride. The quiet knowledge that she had done what needed to be done. And nothing more. At home, Maya brewed tea and sat by the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. She thought about the young women she had begun teaching at the local community center, showing them not how to fight, but how to carry themselves with confidence, how to speak firmly, how to hold their ground. She realized that the night at the restaurant had not just changed her life, it had opened the door for countless others to see that courage and control were intertwined. Strength was not in hitting harder or shouting louder. Strength was in knowing who you were and refusing to let someone else define it for you. The next day at the restaurant, a group of new employees watched Maya as she guided a fellow server through a complicated order. She demonstrated calm patience, correcting small mistakes without anger, showing respect even while maintaining authority. A young man whispered to his coworker, "I don't think I've ever seen anyone handled it the way she did." The coworker nodded, eyes wide, knowing what he meant. She had something no training or book could teach, something earned in life's hardest moments. That afternoon, Maya received an unexpected visitor. A local journalist who had covered the Victor Hawley incident came to interview her. He asked her what it had felt like to face such a powerful man and how she had stayed calm. Maya looked at him steadily and said, "It wasn't about him. It was about me. If I lost myself in fear or anger, I would have lost the only thing I could control. Sometimes, standing still is louder than shouting." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. The journalist scribbled furiously, sensing a story far deeper than scandal or conflict. This was a story about discipline, respect, and quiet power. Weeks later, news of Maya's teachings at the community center began to spread. Parents called, thanking her for showing their children that confidence and courage were not the same as aggression. Young girls and boys began attending her small classes, learning how to move, speak, and think with self-assurance. Maya realized that her strength, once a personal armor, had become a tool for others. She felt proud, but she never let pride take over her calm.